Hi, my name is Kris. Welcome to my channel, Painting the Pieces. And this week, I'm going to be working on this sort of abstracted flower piece. And I'll explain a little bit about the landscape as I go. But for the last couple of weeks, we've been doing flowers with the same medium. We started with this one, just objects that were around my workspace, circles and petal shapes, things like that. Very simple. And then moved on to a more realistic piece. Also, all of these are LightWish watercolor and Faber Castell Aqua water pencils. And I just wanted to get different looks at the same flowers done in a simple way and in a realistic way, and then in this more abstract way. So follow along, and that'll be the next one, and that'll be the last in this series. Thanks. So I got a little head start on this painting. I got the flowers sketched in with just a graphite pencil, and I used the LightWish watercolor set to establish the palette on that flower in the lower right of the screen. And because the LightWish palette set has so many nice golds and yellows, it is fun to use those different colors and put a different color on top so that you can get those kind of different surfaces and colors that don't come by themselves in the pan, that you're creating them as you go. It's a lot like working in oil, where you put down a base color and then you come back with glazes. But in that case, it's done with the oil medium. In this case, it's done with water. But I like the way that looks because it always leaves depth. You can see through the light washes on top to that base layer beneath, and yet it does change the color of that base layer. So it might be something you want to experiment with if you haven't already. So I've got this speeded up quite a bit, as you can see. I only wish I could paint this quickly. And I'm just putting in different colors around the little sections, the little shapes. I'm using for blue because the sky would be involved in a garden picture, even though this is abstracted. And the blue kind of gives your eye a break from the yellows and golds and reds, which tend to lie in that same kind of warm feel. And the greens and blues, I'm going to be using violet, a very dark indigo blue, so one of the blues, and those will cool off the painting a little bit. I flipped the painting in the hope that you'll get a better view without my arm being in the way if that was causing a problem. So this is upside down to you right now. But as I paint most paintings, including the very large canvases, I do turn them around a lot. One, they give you ideas, and two, it's an easier way of working, especially if something is on a desktop like this. Not so important with the easel, but I still do it with the easel as well. So still putting in those oranges and golds for this particular piece at the top. And even as I'm going now and I'm looking at it, you can see that the flower idea is getting lost a bit, which when you're abstracting something, you expect that. In one of my earlier videos where I took a representational look at a tanager and a sunflower, and then I abstracted that in the video, and completely we lost the bird and the flower, which was fine. That was what, the goal was. So that was just to give you an idea how to take something and not leave any of the original piece behind. So I'm sure there would be the question, then why even start with something that is so identifiable, the bird and the sunflower in that case. And it's just a jumping off point. If you don't need it, it's fine. If you like to work like that, and I do sometimes I just go right for the abstract piece, just by laying in shapes and seeing where that takes me. But sometimes it's nice to have the objects also. And you don't always have to extract them that far. You can still leave in pieces that would remind you, in that case, of the bird and the sunflower. But I went as far as afield as I could that time, just to show you what could be done if you're working in an abstract way. I'm still putting in that olive green that I like so much because it has that brown look to it as well. So it's got the greenish brown, which I like. And in the piece at the lower bottom in the middle that you can see was green at first, just kind of a traditional sap green. And I put the olive on top of it, and it really brought in some depth to that piece as well as some texture. I mean, visual texture. It doesn't have any texture itself. It's flat. So I'm just going in these little shapes that I'm doing, these little figure eights. They weren't in the original drawing of the flowers, but when I started to do the flowers and get them sort of boxed in with the color, I waited for those to dry, and then I took the Faber Castell watercolor, the aqua pencil, and I went over and just drew shapes, looped around different parts of the flower and just had some playful fun. And those little pieces are what I'm adding the depth and those little color breaks that you can see, the very small areas. Those were just created by having some fun with the pencil on the paper. And they help you also to think about how you're abstracting it. You can bring in those different colors, but sometimes they give you an idea and you can take off from there. Whether you start with a concept like the flowers I did in this case. Also, I wanted to do this because it was the third video where we had worked with the flowers and done different things with them. The simple one, as I said in the beginning, and then the more realistic one, and now the more abstract one. This does, at some point that you'll see, as I'm flipping the canvas around, begin to look like a landscape, or it did for me. It looked like trails and mountains, the side of a mountain, how the rocks look. And so it became a little bit identifiable with the flowers. But if someone maybe hadn't told you that they were flowers, it would look much more like a landscape. Or it did to me, as I said. So I'm just putting in a kind of lemon yellow here next to a light purple. And now adding those little shapes, as I said, that I made with the pencil. And broke up that really large shape at the bottom. And sometimes I'm just darkening up colors that had been there before, or adding a depth if I want it to look like maybe the petal, or in this case the rock, is tucked underneath something, or there's a dark edge. You can do that, as I just did that purple there. Now going back to that original flower and making a design on that petal. And this is more of the blues. There is in this set a dark turquoise and a light turquoise. So I've used those, and the color that you'll see later, which is really an intense blue, is the indigo. Very intense, dark blue, which of course you can lighten with some water. But if you use it with very little water, it's a nice, dark, midnight kind of blue. I'm probably pondering all the white at this point. I'm kind of surprised at myself that I don't have more done with the right part of the screen. You know, I like to work around the whole canvas or paper so that I can get an idea of how that palette is going to play out. Now this had a violet, which I liked, but I wanted it to pop, so I put in that yellow. And not only did the yellow help that area, but you can see what it did next to the violet. These kind of complementary colors that really make another color pop. And this is another yellow gold. I'm sort of keeping that shape at the top in that warm palette, which is fine. It worked out fine. And as I said, now you're getting a look at the canvas, or the paper in this case, in reverse. This is that same paper, the heavy rag, you can see with the deckled edges, in trying to keep all things being equal, meaning the base structure, so this paper, the LightWish, and the aqua pencils, and graphite. So that was used on all the previous flower paintings that we're comparing this to now. Just, I hope, giving you options. If you want to do the more realistic piece, that's completely understandable. And that was in the video just before this one. There is one video that is a sunflower that's pretty heavily abstracted, and not only that, but really textured. I mean, that was this thick paper, and I really beat it up. I mean, I was scratching on it and using different tools. I wanted to see how much abuse, I guess, it could take, and it did everything very well. I'm really thrilled with this paper. I'll purchase it again. And I believe it was a set of 25 sheets, but they're so nice and heavy. It's almost like fingering fiber, a thick cotton of some kind. I was thinking as I was painting this that sometimes it's nice to have the decal edges show when it's framed, and this would look nice on a black mat, but sitting on top of the black mat so that you could see the decal edges. And this paper, I know I've mentioned this before, even if it warps a little bit, by the next morning it's right back to flat. That's the kind of thickness that it has, and that's really lovely. You don't have to tape it down. You can just start painting, and if it gets so that it's pretty rippled, it will, not to worry, it will all flatten out by the next day. I've had it pretty wet, and it still came back the next day. I never had to weight it down to get rid of any of the ripples in the surface. So continuing with golds, various different golds. At this point, I know on the right-hand side to your view, I want to get some of that indigo in. I need some dark blue. I need something to cool that down. And almost, the rest of the painting is so warm that the indigo will really help that out. And more shapes that were created by the pencil lines. The ones that happened after the flowers were in, and in some cases partially painted, but dried. Now you can use the pencil on top if the painting is still a little bit wet and that pencil is going to bleed, and that's a nice look. But just be very careful if the pencil is too sharp, because it might tear. Although with this paper, it probably wouldn't, because this paper is really a nice thickness. I'm hoping as you watch me paint, and as I talk about the painting, that you'll have something that will work for projects that you're doing. That's the most important thing to me, that you can take this and say, oh, I wanted to do something, and this is how you do that, or this gives me a different idea. And you may have a very good technique on your own. It's just additional information. So now you're seeing it right side up again. And I did want to get some blues down in that bottom area. And they sort of appear to me, as I'm looking at it right side up, that could be the sky. And you can see maybe what I'm saying, that this looks sort of like rocks and trails, and it could be a southwest kind of landscape. Just going back in and trying to define those edges. And this is that green, once again. Just kind of a sap, neutral green. And I'm outlining with paint on the brush some of the pencil lines that I liked. Okay, now upside down to you again, but I'm really getting into that right-hand side now. That's making me feel better. That's the indigo blue, that dark blue there. But it's just beautiful next to the green, too. Really like that. So I have remembered to put the finished painting, which I always try to do, but sometimes I miss the mark, so that you can see when this is finished, right side up, see what it looks like, and have a better idea than while I'm trying to paint around it. And more of that indigo blue. Really pretty. And some more of the oranges, just one of the many oranges in this set. And it's nice because you do have a variety, but even if you don't have a variety, create your own. As I said, put a base layer down and then get some layers over that. Well, thanks so much for watching. This was a fun painting to do. I hope you enjoyed seeing it, almost from the beginning to the end. Have a good creative week. Take care, and hope to see you next time.